With great regularity, I've been discussing the American oligarchy, where you have a group of individuals who have hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars, and they pour this into the pockets of politicians who are intended to represent a population, but instead find themselves representing their donors who pay them out to be bought out. And I always try to explain it in that concept in 2 to 3 sentences because I always feel the more in depth you try to go with on that, people will drown out and they'll find themselves being unwilling to think critically about it. They'll, oh yeah, that's a bad thing, but it'll never go to, well, how do we fix this? And really, to crack any problem and to solve any issue, you have to have at least a person who decides for themselves, yes, this is something that I want to address. This is something that I want to give a level of thought. Doesn't mean the thought has to be automatically correct the first time around, but it's not too big a stretch of the imagination to conclude that the more time you spend trying to figure out why a problem is a problem and how to get rid of that problem, uh, it can be solved. And it's really sad because every time I've thought about the solution for the oligarchy, which is one of three issues that affect me, that bother me the most in the U.S., it always comes down to people just not being conscious of what's going on with their politicians. As long as a lot of these politicians can go around and make some comment about, oh, my hearts and prayers are with these people I've done nothing for but represent nonetheless, you have people who will buy that and eat it up and will go, yeah, this person cares about me, they love me. Oh man, my senator and my governor, they're such great guys, they're upstanding citizens. When if you look at their policies and the amount of attention they give to the people that again are living in the place they represent, it's anything but the case. Um, and in pitching that narrative or that story, it becomes very difficult to have, I guess, confidence about people and their ability to just retain things. Like, for example, if I sat here and did, for 20, 30 minutes and said, here's why the oligarchy is the way it is, a lot of people are going to tune it out after the first minute, if not quicker. Um, and, it's scary because you ask yourself, will they even listen if you break down the consequences of keeping this system in place, this corrupt system, legalized bribing? And a lot of times, people, if they don't want to hear the what it is, why would they want to hear the cause? Why would they want to hear the effects? So it all just turns into kind of an effort where you end up putting your fingers or your hand under your behind and just sitting there in an almost helpless state. Because a lot of the people who have decided to, mute this fact from their lives or from their acknowledgement have chosen to sit on their hands when it comes to this issue. And it's going to affect us even worse as time passes. That's why these schools are unaffordable. That's why healthcare is in such a bad shape as it is. You have these pharmaceutical companies pouring dollars into the pockets of a lot of these Republican candidates. Um, it's just there's a variety of ways we're impacted by these things. The reason they're spending millions and billions of dollars in other countries fighting wars or giving it to some quote unquote ally that hasn't done anything for us is directly the result of the contractors that built those weapons pouring money into the pockets of presidential candidates. When they get in office, they go into a conflict. But again, that no one wants to really just sit there and hear that out. Um, and that's one of the worst parts about having the two dueling topics of this channel. That there's a much more serious issue that people, you know, can fix if they give their attention span a go. They just don't want to. So it is a sad series of events. Um, just to have this topic that stays the same year after year, and then you call yourself trying to fix it in whatever way you can. Look, you have to understand that a lot of people do have the mentality of, well, this person's into this, so why do I have to be into it? Oh, this one person is, uh, you know, willing to drive me around for the next 20 years. Why should I learn how to drive? Well, that person might end up, for all you know, passing away before then, or possibly being in a state where they cannot assist you anymore. So in the event of that happening, you have this backup, um, a different result from what you expected, and that doesn't go through a lot of people's minds. They just say, well, there's a group that's dedicated to that. They can handle it. And sometimes it can be the most simplest of acts. You can say, hey, can you come to this? You don't have to give a speech. You don't have to hold any signs. Just come to this rally and show your support. Oh, no, I can't do that. It's too much. And look, the thing I like about social media and the internet was that it can be used to further our knowledge of things and to understand topics and ideas. I didn't have to go to a library physically to go and read up about these things. But if I ever doubted them, I could go and cite several articles or books that confirm my comments. And that's something that you didn't have 50, 60 years ago. And yet, for some reason, people have allowed themselves to have these devices, these smartphones, for example, and completely avert themselves from going out of their way to learn anything about anything. They might type in a news story here or there. Many cases, they're not even learning about that news story from a news network. They're getting off of another social media site. I had a thing on Instagram a few days ago where I tweeted about not tweeted, I posted about the Stormy Daniels lawyer wanting to run for president. Here's a man who's literally unknown outside of being a lawyer for a porn star who's accusing the incumbent president of having some, adulterous relationship with her. And he's talking about his testing the waters and all this other nonsense. And it gets loads and loads of likes. It gets loads and loads of comments. I was completely shocked because I'm so used to inactivity and maybe one or two people noticing the post that I just went about my day. It was just a standard protocol when it comes to putting that stuff out, and it explodes. And I'm shocked because I'm literally sitting here every minute. This person like this person like this person like. I'm just, what is this? So if people want to pay attention to something, they can, but they have to have, I guess, an incentive. And I mean, what is the solution to that? Do you start paying people? Do you start saying, hey, I'll give you this cash if you sit here and let me discuss with you the American oligarchy and let me tell you all this nasty and very truthful stuff about your representative and senators, and in some cases, your governor. A lot of them still would not do that. One of the things I really liked about history and current events is that after they happen, they never change. The details, the facts, they don't become reverted. Nobody discovers a new thing that says, "Oh no, this person wasn't actually what we thought they were," or "This person didn't do what we thought he did." You see what CP, who I haven't seen in forever, says, "Money is the best motivator these days." I can concede that point. I just hate the fact that you have to pay people to change the system that is affecting their own lives. I don't know if you've been in here that long, but I mentioned earlier that you have these representatives who've been paid out by corporations to just be completely mum on a number of issues. And it's actually started to impact TV networks who don't discuss other topics such as net neutrality. When that whole scandal was going on with the FCC chairman trying to get rid of that, if you went on any of these network programs, even the day that they voted to get rid of it, they went, shh, be very, very quiet. I couldn't believe it, at least for a moment. And because I figure it makes sense to not talk about the same thing every night, but at all. The only time I ever saw anything about the FCC and net neutrality was when Fox would put the yeah, it's a very scary thing, CP. The only thing I saw on television about that issue was when the FCC chairman, with his disingenuous behind, would get on Fox News and go, "Well, we're actually getting rid of the Obama era regulations that restricted internet, and we're really, we're changing things for the better." Speaking with his obnoxious tone, even though in reality the regulation was for all of the service providers to leave our internet alone. Well, it's CP. It's not a lie because it is a regulation, but the regulation only restricts the networks. It's framed as if he's benefiting the consumer, you and me, and I love the Howland series. So his comment was disingenuous. It's correct on its face, but it still is marred in this language that's supposed to make you think something it isn't. I'm telling you, when you sit here and you watch some of these networks, they play the biggest spin game. I remember Trump gave his speech to a joint session of Congress, and he had this woman that was sitting up here. She was the widow of a soldier that was killed overseas. Let me say a little Dirk. And in the course of her sitting there, he goes, oh, your husband was such a great guy, and all the members of Congress start clapping, and then you had Van Jones talking about that's the moment Trump became president, and you think to yourself, you are this happy because a man, a guy who can start wars, get us out of wars, decided to praise a deceased man who went and served for the U.S. in a war that we didn't need to be in. Why don't you praise the guy who stops the war before anybody gets killed? But they don't think that way. They just thought they really allowed this woman to be used as a prop to stir up support for military conflicts that don't do anything for any of us. Let me see. Okay, I think I Love the Howland series has gone to sleep. No, I recant that statement. He says war is more important. Oh yeah, of course. It's kind of funny, and this is really when corporate media is just retarded. Um, for as much as I've spoken negatively about Trump for all of the problems I've had with him for the last 3 years now, the one of the thing the highlights since he's been in office was the meeting with the North Korean leader Kim Jong Un in Singapore, because it at least was the start of relations that didn't have to do with I'm gonna bomb you, no I'm the bomb you, no I'm the bomb you, you're gonna bomb me, blah, blah, blah. And you had these various news networks that expressed outrage. How dare you meet with this dictator? What a disgusting act! For just meeting with this man, for saying, "Hey, look, before we go and destroy each other's countries," which actually that whole thing is fabricated because we can do way more damage to North Korea than they can us. But that's another story. Before we go over there and have any of these conflicts that result in deaths, let's just have a peaceful meeting where we discuss a topic. There was nothing wrong with that meeting, but just that meeting by itself. I don't know what's going to happen afterward, but if they get any conflict from this point onward, that meeting had nothing to do with it. It was exactly what it was supposed to be, which was a peace summit, and a step in the right direction. But see, these corporate pricks are so used to let's have conflicts here. Let me see what this is. CP says, "Isn't that what presidents supposed to do though? Have meetings?" Well, you have to understand this. They were expecting a lot of these corporate networks further escalations between the U.S. and North Korea. And so when Trump didn't deliver on that, they started foaming at the mouths and biting on paper and other forms of plastic, going, "Ugh," all of that nonsense. They couldn't believe it. They were shocked, stunned. So maybe that answered your question. I'm not sure. But that was the reason they were so aggrieved by this by the act of two leaders meeting together. Okay, now I can confirm that the I Love the Howling series has gone to sleep. He's clocked in for the day and made his final comments before hitting the hay, as well as Dirk. So everyone's taking a nap, and he's just abruptly woken up in the last 2 seconds after hearing his name mentioned. Yeah. Hey, we'll go ahead and take the nap. We can't even get the like for four people to pay attention, much less the masses. No, but these titles oftentimes are designed to, I guess, make fun of something that is kind of serious, which is people choosing to not pay any attention whatsoever to major events that are contemporary or just past major events. And it's all laughing and but when you seriously think about it, it gets disturbing. And my main problem has been the fact that it's so easy to look this stuff up. And you have really picture this scenario. Let's say I wanted to discuss, I don't know, World War II, and someone says, "No, I don't want you to recommend me books. I don't want to read any books." And so I say, "Okay, you know what? I'm going to do videos where I just read the books myself." And the person says, "Oh no, I don't want to hear you read. That's boring." I'm like, "Okay, well then you kind of if I'm kind of damned if I do, damned if I don't, because if I tell you to go and read this stuff for yourself, you're not going to read it. If I read it for you, you're going to tell me that's boring. You're not going to check it out. So what's the point?" It's that kind of stuff. Um, Dirk says, "For what you have the title, you can get people to do anything if you offer a free T-shirt." Hey, apparently so, Dirk. They will they'll be satisfied with that shirt. That will motivate them. They'll be reinvigorated. But yeah, I just the net neutrality thing, bringing it up a little bit again, was significant for really pushing. I always kind of had this narrative in my head about people just choosing not to pay attention to things that matter. Um, but it was that event and having all these people who were going to get affected by their internet being screwed over in the way that it was, and choosing to just not do anything about it or say anything or give it any real focus, that further convinced me of just this problem that we have with how people spend their time and what their attention spans are on. Long ago I accepted that a lot of individuals, were not as into this stuff as I am, and I said, hey, that's it's fine. Again, the problem is the issue is not knowing something. It's having the opportunity to know it and then just saying, oh no, screw that. Um, that's where the issue actually comes from, because now you're saying, here is the option, but get out of here. Dirk says it was a fad to talk about net neutrality. Apparently so. People just don't care what happens to them. People are less likely to pay attention to things that doesn't directly affect them. Yeah, and it's kind of scary, CP. I've had to, like, when I mentioned the oligarchy, the entire reason behind me, let me say hello to Envoy, who's disappeared in recent days. The entire reason behind me discussing it was because I wanted to show ways in which it impacts people. A lot of these, middle class, lower class individuals who have the internet and choose not to figure out whether or not their representative or governor or whoever elected official is in the hands of corporations, is eventually, if they have children, going to have to be faced with student loan debt and just expenses to go to school, which are skewed in favor of people who already have loads and loads of money and don't have to cost that much, but are that way as a result of tax cuts that we give to the rich while screwing over the lower classes, and that impacts them that way. But they don't want to hear that talking over their head. And like I said, this stuff can be fixed very easily if you have enough people get together and just say enough is enough. Um, let's pretend we lived in a world where there was monolithic thought, just like how there's monolithic thought on the Me Too thing. There's monolithic thought on you know money being corrupt in politicians, and everybody just puts out a declaration that we will no longer vote for someone who's in the hands of Goldman Sachs or any of these other banks. All of those candidates would drop them so quickly. It wouldn't take a mass demonstration. It wouldn't take a major protest. All it would take is a document signed by millions and millions of people all across the United States that says, hey, look, we're done with this corporation crap. You want some money, you ask me for it. Other than that, go away. So, see. CP says when they start passing out cardboard boxes with stale food in it, I guess that's when they will pay attention. And the disturbing thing is that a lot of people, I guess including myself, but definitely, more popular users try to warn about this stuff and speak about it as commonly and as regularly as we can because it's not getting any better. I think there are about maybe 11 members, counting both the Senate and the House, that aren't taking corporate PAC money. No, like 7 or 8 representatives and maybe 2 or 3 senators, and that's it. And they look at this and they don't see a big deal. There are a lot of people, again, lower class, all ethnic groups, who are, in Texas and these other states that have poor communities, like Illinois, like California, where I'm from, and they have these representatives that, first of all, don't even come to visit or propose anything to actually change the scenarios over there, but also get away with being reelected because the people who are being negatively impacted don't vote, or if they do, it's for that person that's screwing them over while taking cash from their donors. So they really have just allowed this to keep going over and over and over again. But yeah, Envoy was busy for all of last week in a custody battle with his ex-wife over their property, their land. He has like a vanilla fountain where it's just a vanilla milkshake being poured down every every few moments. And he wanted to change it to strawberry, but she wanted to keep it as vanilla, so they were just arguing back and forth. But now he's quiet because he knows that the story that's being told is very accurate. So he's been exposed. When the people who they vote for fail them, they will just blame Obama. Uh, well, that's kind of my problem with this. Like, it's the weirdest conundrum. People pay so much attention to these federal, presidential elections, but then statewide ones and local ones completely forgotten about, not even thought of. For my last gubernatorial election between Brown and I think it was Cash Carr, whatever that guy's name was, um, it only about 2/5 of eligible voters participated in that election, and that is pathetic. The presidential elections actually still do better. It's like 50-60, more often than not. So all around, it's a disappointment in terms of people, and their value system. And believe me, there are a lot of things you could blame Obama for, but your local representative screwing you over and bending over backwards for these corporations is not one of them. So I think people have suddenly become mute. What happened to I Love the Howland series? He went back to sleep. Oh man. Again, then Dirk is gone. He went to bed. What else is here? I think all the individuals that were commenting have decided to part ways and hang in the hat. Yeah, well, we'll see his ransom note tomorrow probably. there's gonna be there's gonna be a video on some channel with a stupid name, and it's a black screen, and the guy has his face covered and all this other stuff, even though you already can't see what he looks like because of how dark it is, and he's gonna have like a computerized voice. I've abducted such and such, and then you see what's his name in the background tied up. Like, I demand you do 5 videos about this topic for his release. Oh, I just realized the 4th of July is another good example, along with Martin Luther King Day, of things that people celebrate and then barely know. Okay, so here's my thing. Go up to any person that's under the age of maybe 40, 35, might even be able to go down to 30, and ask them, do you think we should get rid of Martin Luther King Day? Now, especially if they're, I've seen this more often than not with, liberal leaning person, they're going to say no. And follow that up by asking them, what can you tell me about Martin Luther King? If all they can tell you is that he was a minister who delivered the I Have a Dream speech and got assassinated, they're kind of endorsing getting rid of it. Um, and that's been, my problem is not necessarily with the holiday itself. I just think that people don't take the opportunity to learn about why this man was so significant as to have a whole day named after him. I've never understood that logic. Let's celebrate an event based off of a person that we won't do any research into. It's all kind of weird stuff is going on now. So that's right on schedule. Independence Day is another good one. The U.S. declares itself independent. They know that, some of them, but if you ask a lot of these kids what happened on this day to where we get a holiday and people are throwing fireworks up in the sky and frying barbecue, just they still won't know. And I accept those slightly more because they're not paramount to living. It's kind of a pet peeve situation. It's not detrimental like having all of the members of Congress except for 10 people or 11, be bought out. So I can bear the lack of knowledge on these events and these people more than the oligarchy, just allowing that to continue and voting for the people who are parts of it. I wonder if Native Americans celebrate that day. Oh, oh man. Um, I find it hard to believe maybe some of them do. Who knows? Yeah, the Indian Removal Act. That was yeah, just wow. Let's say when you just hear the details of that policy, Jackson should have been taken off the $20 bill a long time ago. Taken off rather. But that's another thing of, I guess, irrelevance to the main topic here. So, I'm trying to think of something else to say. It's and this is the other thing that gets me. So, I'm not sure what the exact murder ratio is. Basically, what I'm saying is that I've known people who celebrate Martin Luther King Day. I had one person had a Martin Luther King shirt, um, and they have also assaulted people. They've talked about committing acts of, just going and doing things that are involved with being physical. And every time I think about them and I think about that shirt that they, were wearing and, oh, King, yeah. I always ask myself, eh, how can you celebrate the holiday of a man who preached nonviolence, but then participate in violence yourself? Doesn't make any sense to me. Envoy says, Ike been paying too much attention. I'm a little confused by that. You're gonna have to break this down. I'm not that sophisticated. I don't understand. So please tell me what you mean by that. I need an elaboration from Envoy. That's another thing I noticed, that people will leave a comment and just disappear right after. So I'm just waiting for the response, and you don't hear anything back, and it sucks because you don't know if the person's still there or not. So you end up, just sitting there waiting patiently for nothing. That's the running theme of I guess these participations. So if anyone else has anything else to say, let it be known. Forever hold your peace. We can go one way or the other. I don't know. It's just it feels like a thankless fight because a lot of us get tired of ad nation, too much distractions. Uh, I haven't been paying too much attention. Okay, now I get it. No, I just wanted to know whether or not we actually had people still here because a lot of times people, and I've seen them do this. They'll turn the volume down all the way and they'll just go in like at another tab. So you think you're talking to them and they can't even hear you. And even if they have the video still on, they can't hear what you're saying. So I didn't know if Envoy was one of those. I know his ex-wife was. She was into doing things like that. Turn the audio all the way down, just stare at the guy or whoever the person is that's talking. My foot actually almost slipped on this thing right here. So I was very briefly in peril. That's the joy of live streams. You got all the little bloopers and unintended consequences just pouring out right in front of you. So just as my foot slipped on this thing, you could have seen me fall. And that would have been the most watched scene of the entire stream. You go back tomorrow and check that out. Try to get it in HD. Oh yeah, people they like drama and strife. If there's one thing I've seen based off the pattern of what we pay attention to, anything that involves peril or despair or something else having to do with you know uh, bodily injury, it's terrific to them. Slip on the banana. There was one time when I was little, I actually did that. I had a banana that I consumed fully, and its peel I put on the floor and would run up to and see if that joke from the cartoons actually uh, worked. So I would just run up to it and then push my foot up and go, what? So it all kind of plays together. See if anything else being said. I don't know what that LOL was. It was in reference to. There are a lot of things people have laughed about. Oh yeah, the banana peel from that as well. And then you use it on whoever is behind you, or in the most extreme cases, you leave it on the. So this is how slick a lot of these little kids are. There was one person I used to play that game with, and what they would do is they would get the banana or try to get it during their first lap, and they'd put it right in the middle of wherever they were, so that if a person was driving there the first time, they have to go and switch over to one of the sides, and then they would put it on the side next to that first one that was in the middle. So basically, what by the third lap, you have no choice but to fall into that if you're behind them. Let's not forget that blue shell. A lot of these games are tricky. Like I hate it when the streams are like this, where it's just me staring at the camera. Come on, man! Somebody say something. I might end up doing some later on tonight. It just depends on how I feel. I wouldn't count on it though. So it really is a wild card sometimes. Also, I have to have a topic in which I feel, I guess, annoyed enough about to just wanting to sit there and think about it for an hour or whatever, half an hour, some extraneous period of time. So I thank those that participated. Uh, I intend for something else to be up tomorrow. I appreciate it. And people can learn this stuff if they want to. They choose not to because who knows? White people do a lot of things.